One of the questions activists often face is, how do I get people involved? So other videos on this site have begun to answer this question. In particular, I encourage you to look at Dr. Ziad Munson's video on who participates in movements and why. He explains that a key part of getting people to participate is to ask them. I want to talk about another aspect of getting people involved in a movement that's really important. So you also need to have what we might call low stakes entry points to movement activity. So what do I mean by that? One of my areas of interest, research interest, is the reproductive health rights and justice movement in the United States. So the reproductive rights movement in particular has been recognized as what social movement scholars call a professionalized movement. This means that many of the organizers and the organizations that are involved in advocacy around abortion access are staffed by professionals, people who are paid activists. There are a lot of advantages to having this sort of movement structure and organizational structure. I want to talk about some of the sort of unintended consequences. So one of the things that happens when you have a movement that is structured primarily in terms of professionalized activists, professionalized organizations, is that what happens to the people who might want to be involved but cannot or do not want to be professional activists. And this is what faced the reproductive rights movement largely throughout the 90s and the early 2000s. There weren't any real access points. Organizations would ask people to donate money, but this is abortion care is medical care. You can't really volunteer inside a clinic for safety and medical care reasons. And so the movement really didn't have a way to harness any general interest. It didn't have any entry points for people who might just be invited to participate and then become activists within the movement. So in parallel to this, the movement against abortion, the anti-abortion movement, had developed a whole network of low stakes access points, including the crisis pregnancy center movement. So they had sites, physical spaces where people could come without any special training, without any special skills, and be a part of a community. And they could do this for an hour a week. They could do this for 10 hours, 40 hours a week, right? There was a range of opportunities that made this an entry point that then could be leveraged or could grow into something else. In the last decade or so, a little bit more than the decade, the reproductive rights movement, in addition to beginning to bridge and build connections with the reproductive health and reproductive justice movements, so that now we often think of it as a reproductive health, rights, and justice as a singular movement, it's started to identify more low stakes entry points, other ways that people can be involved in the movement, in activism and advocacy, that aren't tied to just passively giving money or making it a full-time career. And so one of the things that's really important when you're thinking about inclusion, helping people become involved in an activist identity, become involved in an activist cause or movement, is thinking not just about who, but how. And so having places that people can be invited to, including them in building a community, having these low stakes access points that may or may not build into something else. Thanks.